Imagine you're on your way to work to a very important meeting. You're driving, but you are 10 minutes late. Every signal on the way is red, there is a traffic signal, and that 10 minutes is soon turning into 1 hour. Your stress levels are starting to rise, you start to panic. You're wondering what your boss would think of you. You're wondering what your colleagues would be judging. You start getting irritated, annoyed, you start shouting at other drivers, you may get into fights, you start driving rashly, and things go from bad to worse. If this sounds relatable, it has happened to every one of us at some point in our lives. Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Warrier. I'm a neurologist, and on this channel, I help you understand your brain so that you can live a better life. Today we are talking about a powerful method of dealing with stress called as the Lazarus method. Stress is not only something we all experience, but it is also something that has a significant impact on our well-being. So it's important to understand what stress is and how do we effectively manage it. In the 1980s, two psychologists, Richard Lazarus and Susan Folkman, wrote a book called Stress, Appraisal, and Coping. In that book, they introduced a concept which came to be known as the Lazarus method. The core concept is simple. The stress that you experience isn't solely dependent on the event itself. It also depends on how you perceive it. Before we get to the method itself, let me take 2 minutes of your time to explain to you the neurobiology of stress. So when you get stressed, what exactly is happening in your brain? Stress is a natural response of the body whenever it is faced with an uncertain or threatening situation. Whenever you're faced with a problem that you've never faced before and you're not sure on how to proceed, your body feels a little bit of stress. Now, the reason this happens is because your brain does not like losing control. So whenever your brain is in a situation where it is helpless, it starts getting defensive. It activates its defense mechanisms, and one of the most important defense mechanisms in the body is called as the fight and flight response. And because this is such an important job, it is left to the most primitive part of the brain called as the limbic system. This is where all your emotions and your memories are stored. And then you start acting more out of instinct and impulse than out of logic. There are two parts to the method. Number one is appraisal and number two is coping. Let's talk about the first part, which is appraisal. Appraisal means looking at something and noticing all the details about that thing. So in part one of this method, appraisal has two steps: primary appraisal and secondary appraisal. Primary appraisal tries to answer the question, how will this event affect me? And so we waste valuable resources stressing about things that are not really going to have an impact on you except in your imagination. Another important point here is how you perceive the event will also influence how stressed you are. Understanding the significance of an event can help us think about that event with clarity. The reason we need to do this is because our limbic system is not always very good at judging a situation accurately. It often jumps to conclusions, it thinks of doomsday scenarios, it can think of the worst possible outcomes first and then make decisions according to that. And that is not always true or accurate. You need to let your prefrontal cortex into the picture. Allow your prefrontal cortex to judge the situation properly before deciding how stressed you want to be or not. The next part is secondary appraisal, which is now turned inwards. Initially, we were looking at the problem. Now we are looking at ourselves. Do I have the resources to cope with this event? Putting that into different words, do I have the resources to control this or not? Now, the roots of this thought is very old. Stoicism also deals with a similar concept, and so does Bhagavad Gita. In Gita, Lord Krishna says that you have to do your job and not worry about the results. Similarly, here in secondary appraisal, what this method talks about is understanding till where can you control the outcome of an event and where can you not. Consider the resources you have, and those resources can be internal or external. Internal resources are your determination, your willpower, your energy levels, your own finances. External resources is your support system, your friends, your mentors, people you can ask advice from, people who can give you money and time. Those are your external resources. Putting all of this together, do you have the capacity to deal with this event, or do you not have the capacity? Having this level of insight is necessary because many times we might over or underestimate our own capacity and we will make wrong decisions. Now, this level of insight does not come easily, but it does come with practice. Managing stress effectively requires a good level of insight into your own capabilities. Do not overstretch yourself, delegate or ask for help whenever necessary, and document your growth. One of the things that we often forget is that not being able to deal with the problem today does not mean being able to deal with the problem never. We are constantly learning, growing, evolving, adapting. So give yourself time and you will find that today's stress becomes tomorrow's gains. And finally, we move on to the last step of the Lazarus method, which is coping. How do I cope with this event? This is where we put all our strategies into action. Lazarus and Folkman, the psychologists who came up with this method, divided strategies into two parts, problem-based and emotion-based. When you are faced with a heavy workload, problem-based solving could mean breaking down that big, heavy task into smaller, manageable chunks, creating doable deadlines, and creating an action plan. On the other hand, emotion-based problem solving involves learning how to regulate your emotions while you are solving the problem. This could include deep breathing exercises, engaging in mindfulness or meditation activities, connecting with your support system, talking to a friend or a therapist. Emotional regulation is a superpower, and each and every one of us has the capacity to learn it, only if we practice. So, here is a real-life example of the Lazarus method in action. Imagine Priya, a woman in her late 20s going for a job interview. Instead of panicking, she uses the Lazarus method to cope with her stress. Initially, she appraises the event, which is an interview that is important for her job, her career, and her finances. She looks at her own resources to see whether she has the qualifications, the experience, and the confidence that she needs to crack this interview. She thinks about her external resources, which is her current financial status, the kind of support system she has, and whether these resources are enough to cope with this stress. And finally, in response to the stress, she uses coping mechanisms involving both problem-based and emotion-based strategies. This includes researching for the interview in advance, studying about the company, preparing her answers well before her interview, and preparing herself for what kind of questions might come her way. In addition, she also works on her mindset to make sure she's positive, cheerful, and uses relaxation techniques to calm her anxiety down. As a result of using the Lazarus method and approaching this problem in a stepwise manner, Priya is able to go through her interview in a much better way. This is because by the simple act of dealing with stress in a stepwise manner, what you are doing is taking back control from the limbic system and giving that control to the prefrontal cortex. Now you have space to think logically, rationally, and calmly, and converts the whole instinctive dealing with stress into a more voluntary, conscious effort. In other words, you're being more mindful of your stress response. I hope these examples and key takeaways of the Lazarus method help you deal with the stresses of your life better. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, hit that like button. Share with me your stories of how you have dealt with stress. Share this video with your friends who might want to hear this, and let me know what other videos you would like me to make. Also, a quick update, I will be making these videos in Hindi as well. I know a lot of you have been asking me to make videos in Hindi, and so I'm listening to you, and that's what we're going to do on this channel. In the meantime, subscribe to the channel for more neuroscience content, and I will see you all soon. Bye everyone, take care.